Hello everyone and welcome back to another Minecraft update video. This one covers multiple pre-releases and the last one I covered on this channel was pre-release 3, and since then there's been loads of pre-releases coming out faster than I can cover them, so we're doing it all in one video, and this probably means that we are getting closer to the release of 1.16. Maybe we'll learn a release date real soon, but I think it's just around the corner. So anyway, we're going to go through these pre-releases one by one, but the first thing I'm going to do is cover two things related to pre-release 3. So I pride myself on trying to be as accurate as I can be when making these videos, and on occasion I got it wrong, and that's what happened last time around, and I would like to correct myself. We were talking about bounding boxes and a change that will come after 1.16 that will affect nether farms, and now I have turned on a mod to show us the area in which this change is going to take place. It is not the structural bounding boxes, which are yellow right here. It is the overall bounding box, this cyan color, of the entire fortress. Okay, mobs are able to spawn out here if you place down nether brick. A wither skeleton can spawn out here. You can build a farm in this space. The change will be that it's this space here that they won't be able to spawn in a future version of Minecraft. And to clarify, that means they can spawn inside of these structural shapes, highlighted by the yellow area here, so you would be able to extend the platform of a crossroads and still have a farm built in this section. The second thing I missed from pre-release 3 was the inclusion of these three tags: Infiniburn End, Nether, and Overworld. These tags simply identify that netherrack and magma blocks can burn forever in the overworld. That rule is the same in the Nether because it references the rule from the overworld file. But in the end dimension we learned that bedrock can infinitely burn. And I did not know that. And there you go. Fire on bedrock in the end dimension never goes out. You learn something new every day with this game, I swear. So these pre-releases are loaded with bug fixes, a lot of which are just related to things that break in the recent development cycle, and so I'm just picking out the most important of these things to communicate to you. So let's start with pre-release 4. And this one is the smallest of all the pre-releases. Some changes to mob spawning rates. Here in Soul Sand Valleys, you should see very slightly more ghasts overall, and a few more skeletons on average. And over here in the Warped Forest, you should see more Endermen on average. Those are the three mobs that have had their spawning rates tweaked in the Nether. Some of the recent changes involving creating water buckets inside of your inventory didn't work the same way with getting milk or getting a mushroom stew. So now when I click on this again, you'll see we just keep the one mushroom stew or the one milk bucket in our inventory. This also created a bug in survival mode where the item completely gets consumed when you use it like this, it just disappears, and that has been fixed in a later pre-release. In pre-release 5, a GPU warn list was added to the game for graphics drivers that don't support or have issues with the fabulous graphics. So this new graphical option was added in pre-release 1, and if your computer has an issue with it, you'll see this warning screen and it will give you information about what the problem is, and you can of course ignore it at your own risk. You might run into some issues though with the game and how it looks. If you have ever thrown snowballs or eggs in this game, you'll know that it appears right in front of the camera when you throw it, sort of like what's happening right now, except in this pre-release it will now appear just a little bit later so it doesn't flash up right inside of your face. This is actually something added in one of the combat test snapshots. It's nice to see it make its way over here to 1.16. Villagers and the wandering trader now know that they should flee from the Zoglin. This was just something that was overlooked. They wouldn't actually run away from a Zoglin mob, which they now both do. You are now able to control middle click a lectern, and that will copy across its contents, which it wasn't doing before. It would just copy a blank lectern. The same now goes for jukeboxes. So let's control middle click, place it down over here, give it a right click, you can see it's got the record inside of it. One thing I will point out is that the music isn't playing. That's the one source of music, so when you place it down it doesn't start playing the record. When you shift click netherite ingots into a smithing table, it now goes into the correct slot where before it seemed to go over here. Shift clicking now goes to the correct space. There was a bug that allowed naturally spawning iron golems to spawn inside of blocks just like this. So if you had an iron farm, you can imagine that was causing a whole bunch of nightmares. This is fixed in this pre-release. Due to recent changes and bug fixes that were introduced and then removed, The zombified piglins were dropping experience when dying aggressive, but not ingots and not nuggets. That's been patched and restored, so if you got a gold farm using their aggression, that'll continue to work in 1.16. There was also a bug that stopped mobs from getting damaged when crushed by a soul sand block or a path block, something that's basically not full. That's been patched, they will take damage once again. And in pre-release 6 we have changes, we have bug fixes and a technical change. The advancement trigger, player interacted with entity, has been added. This allows you to match an entity being interacted with by an item that the player is holding. So on to the changes. The map colours of crimson and warped materials have been tweaked. You can see the colours on the map and the blocks are just over here. There is now text inside of the recipe book that says search over here, just to make it clear that you can click here and you can search for whatever your heart desires. The game mode switcher menu will now have a new default when you create a fresh world. Of course, it remembers what you switch between, but when creating a new world, if you're in creative mode, the default switch is going to be to survival, and if you're in survival, adventure, or spectator mode, the default switch will be to creative. Hoglins and zoglins used to share the same texture for their tusks. In fact, it almost looks like this one is now slightly golden. Well, anyway, this is a change for resource pack makers, as you'll now be able to give each of these unique tusks. This is a peculiar detail, but when throwing a splash potion on the ground, the particle effects appear in the furthest northeast corner. So I throw it at that spot, and wherever I throw it, it always appears at the most northeast of that block. And so now they appear to just form at the center of the block, regardless of where the splash potion actually lands inside of that block. This is what's known as a undead village, a zombie village. It's very rare to find one of these in your world. There was an issue though, that the zombie villagers that spawn inside one of these were just regular zombie villagers, meaning that if the player were to go away, they could despawn. They are now going to be persistent, so when you find a village like this, all of its inhabitants should remain as long as they haven't burned up in the daylight. Loading redstone from structure blocks would actually forget if the redstone was in the dot or the cross state. That will be fixed in this pre-release. When placing kelp into flowing water, it creates a source block. This is a known little trick, and the chain was actually behaving the same way. Now when you put the chain into flowing water, it actually cuts the water off, as you can see here. Due to changes to knockback resistance introduced in Snapshot 20W06A, mobs like the Ravager actually lost their knockback resistance, and now it's been given back to them. So I'm hitting it with a knockback 2 sword, and as you can see, it's resisting that. And this includes other mobs as well, like the Hoglin, for example. Here in the end dimension, you can throw an ender pearl into an end gateway to get teleported to a new location. And if you've done this in survival, I've experienced it. On occasion, you throw in an ender pearl and nothing happens. Apparently this has been fixed, so hopefully we won't get irritated by things like that happening in the future. Before this pre-release, piglins were unable to spawn with enchanted gold gear, and I do believe the chances of this actually happening are extremely rare. So as I spawn a whole bunch in here, we're probably not going to see it, but they will now be able to spawn with enchanted gold gear. Baby piglins are now going to run away from wither skeletons, so just a simple oversight that the baby ones weren't running away, which they now do. And piglins are known to be afraid of the soul campfire, but there was a slight oversight. They would also be afraid of a soul campfire that was put out. So the difference now is they're not afraid of this one. Or are they? Well, maybe they still are, but this was supposed to have been fixed. If you have your subtitles on, you will see that the zombie piglins, they grunt. However, if they're angry at you, that subtitle will now say that the zombie piglin grunts angrily. So this obviously relays to the players that rely on the subtitles and lets them know if the zombie piglin is angry or not. So now let's look at pre-release 7. There's nothing but bug fixes here, and all of these bug fixes are related to the pre-releases and very recent snapshots, which means we're really getting to the last parts of the development now, as they're not tackling big and old bugs. This is all about polishing up 1.16. So this means there's lots of silly bugs that are barely worth talking about, which only occur in the pre-releases. So I was holding down forward and jump, and in this level of lava, if I hold down forward and jump, I get stuck here, and that's just a silly little pre-release bug. So for that reason, we have very little to talk about, but if you have a zombified piglin golden XP farm, you'll probably have seen my recent videos talking about the changes to this, and in that process it turns out that these mobs are actually dropping less than half the amount of experience points that they would have done before these changes are made. So in this pre-release, things are all back to normal. They drop gold, they drop golden ingots, and they also drop the right amount of XP. And earlier in this video we talked about the spawn rates of skeletons and ghasts inside of the Soul Sand Valley. Well, apparently those changes weren't actually implemented correctly, and it looks like this pre-release is the one where those spawn rates are actually adjusted. Last of all, we have two changes related to resource packs and textures. So the zombie pigman has a raised arm, but its sleeve layer would have been down at the side, and this picture from the bug report shows you what's going on there. So that's been patched. The sleeve layer will raise with the arms. And previously the striders were using the same texture for both legs. As you can see here, the left and the right side are identical, but now in the resource pack you'll be able to give both of their legs a different texture. And now we're going to talk about pre-release 8, and in this one there's quite a few bugs related to tridents that have been fixed, like 4 or 5 of them. And they're all to do with the way the trident appears when you hold it. And right now it looks normal, but if I remove this from my offhand and do that again, in pre-release 7, it appears behind your head, which is so silly. But let's put the bow back on the offhand, and if I charge it and then flick to the trident, you can see the trident is the wrong way around. So like I said, that and a few other similar bugs had been fixed, and here's something that had been a problem a long time ago in the game. You would put water above grass, and then the grass below wouldn't decay into dirt, which it's supposed to do. So this was a bug that supposedly got fixed, and it's been noticed that now what happens is the grass turns into dirt too quickly when water is above it. This should be happening at a far slower rate. So in pre-release 8, you should see your grass stay around for a little bit longer if water is above it. So we talked earlier in this video about how piglins never spawned with enchanted armor, which they now can do, but when this was implemented, it was done incorrectly, and it was possible for these piglins to have a ridiculous amount of enchantments on a single item. And so that's been taken care of, and there were quite a few other bug fixes as well, but most of these just related to the recent pre-releases and were, you know, small little bits of game mechanics that are broken in the pre-releases just getting fixed. So if you want to read up on these changes, there'll be links to the blog posts in the description box down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and let me know what you think of me lumping all of these pre-releases together in one video. Is that something you'd like to see, or would you like to see separated videos every time a pre-release comes out? Let me know with a comment down below. That's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.